Hello, everybody. Welcome back. I'm getting ready to get started on my next project. It's going to be fence columns and fencing. And essentially, this is a revisit. Anybody that follows my channel knows that I kind of already made one of these videos, but it was an old video. I wasn't using any kind of microphones at the time. For the most part, you really couldn't hear anything I was saying. It was really hard to hear. You had to turn the volume up. Then when the music started, you had to turn the volume down. Very frustrating, very hard to follow. So I wanted to do an updated video, plus also show a little bit more some of the materials I'm using. The other thing I want to do with this video, I wanted to make it very low tech. Even in most of my videos, I'm using stuff like spray guns, routers, table saws, welders, things of that nature. I know not everybody has that stuff on hand, so I don't know if that might deter people from wanting to do the project. While I don't have those kind of tools, so I can't really make that. So I want to show how you can pretty much make yourself a cool set of columns with just basic hand tools. I'm talking razor knives, sandpaper, razor blades. Just about most people are going to have a drill for putting the fencing together. So I just want to show how you can make something out of just basic everyday hand tools and the confidence to be able to do something like this. And all I'm using is some 3/4 foam board, some 1x2s, some nails, some screws, some caulking made by Loctite PL300. It's made for foam board. I can only find that at Home Depot. I haven't found it anywhere else. And Hobby Lobby already has their Christmas stuff out. I got some Christmas ornaments. I bought a 6-pack for 13 bucks. You can't go wrong there. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and kind of show you what the game plan is. Okay, so here's the game plan. What I did is I wanted to make sure I can maximize the usage of that foam board. So what I did is I scaled this by every 1/16 of an inch equaled 1 inch, 3/4 of an inch equaled 1 foot. So I scaled this out as essentially a 4x8 sheet of plywood, or foam board, I mean. You can see I got my rendering of my post here. What my idea was is obviously to make my post right here, have a base on the bottom, your top cap, this top piece, and the Christmas ornament. I figured the best size to go with is 11 by 11. Now, since I'm going low tech, I'm not going to use any table saws or anything to do 45-degree angles. Since this is 3/4 of an inch, I got to drop 3/4 off for the back piece that goes against it. So that'll be 10 1/4. So I was able to get it mapped out to where I can make 3 columns out of this one sheet of foam board. So I got my 3 front pieces, my 6 side pieces, top piece, and my bottom pieces. And then once I started getting into this section, I realized with or without making this bottom piece, I wasn't going to have enough for this right here. So I'll figure something else out for that down the road. So instead, I'm just going to do the border here. I'm going to go ahead and do the border on top right here. So, but this is essentially the game plan. This is how I'm going to maximize out that piece of foam board. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so all I'm really using here is just an old kitchen knife that I made sure was nice and sharp and a straight edge. I'm not using any kind of special like foam cutter or anything like that. Just a simple knife. All right, so everything is cut. Here's all my side pieces, my front pieces, my tops, my bottoms, my bottom borders, my top borders, and this right here is all that's left out of that entire 4x8 sheet. And like I said, other than the fact that I might have to do something different for the top here, this create 3 columns. So between the 3 columns and 2 sections of fencing, deducting a little bit for the fencing going inside the columns, I should be able to cover about 18 feet worth of space between this and that right there. So I'm going to go ahead and start putting them together. Now this is where those nails come into play. I just take the caulking, put the caulking on the edges. I'll run the nails in into the 2 surfaces. I'll usually put them at an angle so it grabs more material, less chance of them possibly shifting or moving apart while the caulking and everything is drying. Oops, little miscut. I'll fix that later. All right, so I got the 3 of them put together. The last thing I like to try to do to make them just a little stronger is I like to take the caulking and I like to caulk all the seams on the inside. With the foil, you're caulking from the foil to the foil, so it actually, grabs a lot more and it really makes them much stronger. And then obviously I'll caulk all the seams here and there. And then the bottom, I'll usually try to cover the foam all the way just to help with sealing it up. Plus it also makes it take paint faster. I'm not worried about the roughness because some of the roughness stuff I'll be able to peel off when it's fully dry. That also, it doesn't matter if they're a little rough, it just adds to the character of them. So I'm just going to go ahead and let these dry and then we'll go to the next step. All right, well, while these were drying overnight, I went ahead and hit the Dollar Tree because you get things nice and cheap there, and picked up a couple different things for tops. Just experimenting, trying to come up with some potential ideas. This right here, I kind of like this, but I don't think I like how tall it is here. So either I might cut it down or I'll just sink it into the PVC. I just like because it has like this little cradle that holds the ball. Found this right here. It has a nice little taper to it, and I put the ball on top. And I found this right here. I would say I won't leave it this tall. I'll probably cut it down to a certain point and bring it down maybe to this tall kind of thing. I also decided, since I'm going to do 3 different finishes, I'm going to do 3 different columns. So you see on this one right here, I cut the top plate so it's flush. This one here, I left it as is as when I originally built it. And then this one, I removed the bottom piece before the caulking was dry. So this way, you're going to have 3 different finishes and 3 different styles. Now, what I do to make my bricks and all that, because this was going to be brick, block, and then the stucco, I always make all my brick 2.5 inches because it's just easier to do, 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10. It's easier for calculations that way. Then I'll usually take whatever the width of this is, I'll divide it in half, and then I'll take whatever that is, divide that in half, and come up with that. So that way I keep everything, nice and even like you see on a brick. And then whatever this one ends up being is where it starts here. But since this is 11 by 11, the measurements for here is going to be the same for here. So this way, when you look at it from the angle, everything looks nice and symmetrical like it should. I do the same thing for the block. See where I go dead center, so everything looks nice and symmetrical. And then on this one right here, you can see I'm just going to carve out a section, and then after it's carved out, then I'll do a brick in there. Now, usually a lot of times I'll use my router to do this, but since I'm trying to make these very DIY, because not everybody's gonna have a router just sitting around ready to do something like this, I'll be using razor blades and a knife to do a lot of the carving on these. So I'll make just a quick skit showing how I use the razor blade and how I do the other section. Then I'll show everything when it's done, just to try to keep the time frame down. Okay, so I went ahead and did this one real fast, and you see where I got my lines. Now what I'm going to do is on the other one, I'm going to show you how I create these lines with just using either just a razor blade or even just a sharp utility knife or a sharp kitchen knife would do the same thing. Let me pull this off. Pick this one up. So all I do, if I'm going to be doing this, is either you could use just a regular razor blade, or unfortunately, mine broke while I was doing the other one. One of these X-Acto style knives will work also. But all I do is, and keep in mind, these don't have to be perfect, because they are going to be something that's supposed to look old and worn and that kind of stuff. So your grout lines don't have to be perfectly on every one of them. I'll just take my razor blade, I'll just hold it a little bit of 45, and I'll just go through it like this. And one thing I did here is my sheet had this crease in here. So what I did is, when I was mapping out my bricks and everything on my blocks, I used this as one of my start lines. So this way I could disguise it within my system. So this way you didn't see it. And now I'm right-handed. So what I'll do is I'll cut all my lines, and I'll flip it over, and I'll cut the other side. Now with this having the fold, it's a little bit of a pain. But then I'll just come over here, do this, like that. Like I said, it is a little inconsistent, so let me see if I can feather that out just a little bit. And then once you get done, after you do all your lines, if you wanted to make them a little bit better, just take a piece of sandpaper and just go right through them like this. And I'll give you a nice little deep, grout line right there. And that's all I do to cut my grout lines. So I'm going to go ahead and let me get this one finished up, and then I'll show you the other one. All right, so I went ahead and started doing this to kind of show you how it looks like, the plaster is kind of broken off, and you see the brick below it. Now, essentially, all I do to achieve that, if I'm not using a router, is I'll generally use a large knife, some form of razor blade, and all that to essentially create it. So what I'll do is, like right here, I drew a little line. So what I'll do is I will, and also make sure that however far you're going in, whatever knife you're using will reach that far. You don't want to use a small knife like this, and then you're cutting way out here, because then you're not going to get that far into it. So like this right here, I'll just going to do like a nice little like that right there. I'll take my knife, and you're only going to want to put it in barely 1/8 of an inch. If you can see the foil wrinkling up as you're doing it, then you're pretty much in a good spot. You don't want to really much go any deeper than that. Now the goal here is not to go too deep. You just want to go just a little bit below the surface, so it's not too far down. And now, if say you're using, I'm going to go brick because I already went brick there. Now I started from the top, so, but you want to make sure you stay consistent. So I'm going to do my 2.5, 5, 7.5, 10, 12.5 will be 1, then 15, 17.5, 20. So these will be my straight lines. The reason I say do it this way, do that, is so this way when you look at it, you don't have a brick that doesn't look consistent with your top one up there. And that's if you're doing 2 sections worth. If you're only doing 1 section, then it really doesn't matter. And now this part is going to be, it'd be hard for people to really spot, but if you really wanted to get technical, you could say, okay, this one had the line here, 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 and there. Those are the ones that are going to have the 2 3/4 line. So 2 3/4. So I got a line here. That one's going to be buried. You won't see it. So now I'll do my normal razor blade. And say like I wanted to be able to see that other line down here, I could always just say go like this, like maybe like right here, kind of do like feather it out a little bit, maybe do like a something like that right there. Tear that off so I can see where I'm at. And I go do a little more cutting. If I wanted to, because say like I want to be able to see that other line here. So now that other line is going to be, in this location right here. And then my straight line. And then I'll use take a little sandpaper. Then the next step to kind of give you like that feathered out look is to take your blade and put it at a nice, as much of an angle as you can. Now all you're really doing here is just making a transition from one surface to the other surface without having like a hard line. And then take some sandpaper. Don't go against the foil because you're going to rip it off. Go either with the foil like this or go this way. I like to go with it this way because I don't want to sand into my little brick pieces. If you do tear some of the foil, it's not the end of the world. You're going to paint it anyways. But what you want to do with this, what you want to do with that part is, because you don't want your lines to go all the way to the thing, because it's supposed to look like it, kind of broke off, and you're always going to have some there that still has your line covered. So you can see where the line is still covered by some of the plaster, but it broke off. And that's essentially how I'll do it that way without a router. Now, if you have a router, it's a lot easier because you just set your router, buzz it all out, make your lines, and you're done. Do it this way, it takes a little bit longer, but you can still achieve the same result from that. And then if you wanted to go all the way around the corner like I did this one, you would just come over here, do this, follow the same process, draw your lines, sand it, and now you have a nice corner broke off. I just wanted to bring something up real fast. I haven't really brought it up in the video at all just yet. If anybody was curious why I only made it 3-sided, you see I got the 3 sides on here. I left the back completely hollow. I did that because usually like with my displays, I like to have a place to put like my lights or fog machine, or even if I'm using a projector for something, and you can hide them back here. So let's just use this as, for instance, like say I'm on the outside of the display. This is the side of the column I'm going to see anyways. I'm going to see this side. I'm going to see this side. I can't see the back anyways because I'm on the sidewalk out here. So now if I have a projected image, that projector's back here. I don't see the projector. I just see the image. If there's lights in here, the lights just put off a bunch of extra lights, fog machines. And with having the silver on here, the silver reflects the light. So when you have the light in there, it actually will help amplify the light. And you can also, like if you have extra material, depending on how you make them, let's say you buy a whole bunch of sheets and stuff like that, you can put extra pieces in here to essentially create shelves. So you can put a light here shining this way, a light here that shines this way, a light here that shines this way. And you could put 3, maybe even 4 lights or whatever inside here that you could really direct towards like focal points of your display. And no one's ever going to see those lights like sitting on the ground, you know, aiming up or however you want them. So that's the reason I made them hollow. So I wanted to bring that up real fast just in case anybody was kind of curious. All right, before I do any painting, I usually like to cut my notches for my fencing first. If I only have like 1 or 2 of these, you know, and I don't have a whole lot of them, I'll just measure them out, cut my things out. I usually try to hold them up about 1 inch from the bases on either side. If I have a whole bunch of them, I'll make myself a jig like this. What I'll do is I'll lay it on here, I'll mark it, you know, top and front, which would be in this case be this way. And then what I do is I just put it in there, and I just will cut out my notches, and I'll go to the next one. And what that'll do is that'll allow me to keep them all consistent. So this way all the fencing ends up being the same height as they go into the sides here. And that's what I do for that. Now I'm going to show essentially how I make my fencing. All right, so what I do here is my 2 horizontals, I'll mark them 3 inches because that's how much I want inside the column, because that gives it plenty of area to grab and less chance of potentially falling out. So what I'll do is I'll set it in there, set this one 3 inches, slide this one in, put them right on my lines. And then what I'll do is I'll take one of my uprights, and I usually will always put a little pre-drill it, just less chance of splitting. And what I'll do is I'll set it to the height of my, you know, not my top cap, but like, you know, this piece right here where the bottom is. And what I'll do is I'll put it right against it. That gives me a good area to make sure that when I push it into that column, it always stops in the same spot. All right, so now that I got the 2 uprights preset, they're both set to the same height on both sides. My horizontal is preset. It's not going to move. It's all, the geometry is always going to stay the same. So I'll go ahead and I'll pull it out, set it down. And what I'll do is I'll take all the rest of my uprights, and what I'll do is I'll measure this part right here to see what it is from the top to there. I'll make a mark on my board. Now, you can take the time to measure what you have between here, divide it, and come up with a bunch of center lines and stuff like that. And, you know, if you want to be very precise, you know, you definitely do that. But a lot of times I'll just lay them all on there. I'll go all the way across. And I'll just eyeball them so they look pretty good. I mean, like I said, it's not supposed to look perfect. It's supposed to kind of have like that look. It's old and, you know, falling apart and that kind of stuff, you know. And then at this point, then it's just a matter of pre-drilling the holes, running the screws in. All right, so really that's all there is to just making that fence section. Pretty much what I do is I'll mark, you know, all my pickets that I'm going to put, you know, at the height that I, you know, did my preset for this one. And I just screw them all in. And once you get it all screwed in, since you preset the height for your notches, they just slide right in. And I always start with a dark gray paint first. Okay, so I got the 3 painted. They're nice and dry. Now, I always start with a gray base for starters, especially when I have mortar joints and stuff like that. So this way the mortar joint already has the gray in it, and I'm really only going over the high surfaces with the paint after the fact. Now, a lot of people you'll notice they'll mention the word dry lock and stuff like that. What it is. It's a waterproofer for cinder blocks for basements and retaining walls and stuff like that. It helps keep moisture from transferring through like cinder blocks and things of that nature. It comes in a 1 gallon jug or a 5 gallon jug. The only downside is that stuff's very expensive and it doesn't go super far. And unless you plan on having it in a spot where you think everybody's going to walk around and touch it, kind of thing, they're not going to know if it feels like concrete or not. I mean, that's not really the point. The point is for the decorative aspect of it. Now, the one thing I didn't do on this one is mention what my plan was here to kind of show you some differences. On this side, I peeled the foil off. This side, I didn't peel the foil off. Earlier in the video where I was talking about how with the foil being on there, it'll take paint faster. So I use less paint to cover my material than if it was just straight foam. And this right here is what you can see. When I peeled the foil off this side, you can see where how it's bled in. It's not consistent. It doesn't have as good a coverage as say this side. But the good side is this makes it look so much nicer. You can see we have nice texture to it. It looks really good. You see like the imperfections in it. Versus this side, it's very smooth looking. And peeling the foil off, there's nothing wrong with peeling the foil off because you're going to put more paint on here anyways. But the drawback to pulling the foil off is it loses some of its structural properties to that foil. And what will happen over time is that panel will start to bow on you. Sometimes it'll bow inward, sometimes it'll bow outward because it lost the rigidity on one side. So what I usually do to counteract that, if I know I'm going to do it this way, and I have extra material, it could be scraps of wood, it could be more foam board, whatever, I'll add reinforcement. Either I'll add more shelves in here, like I was talking about for my lights, or I'll glue strips of wood on it, and that'll counteract the bowing, and you'll be perfectly fine. Now all I'm doing here is just making sure there's just enough paint on the roller to hit the high sides, or the high spots. Doing a little touch up with the bricks with just a regular brush. And kind of the same thing, just making sure I have just enough paint to cover it, but not make enough to where I get into the brick area. Same thing again, I'm just making sure I'm hitting the high spots with a lighter gray. Doing just a little touch up around the thing to soften that edge. Okay, so we made it to this point right here. They're all fully painted. Now what I did with this one is I kind of gave it the look like, since they stuccoed it, they painted it, so it's kind of a tannish color. After I did the brick, I painted the rest of it with a lighter gray, so this way the mortar joints are kind of their own color, and then the rest of it's a different color. I did the same thing here. I did a lighter gray over top of the darker gray, so this way the mortar joints would stand out, so I don't have to put a bunch of black in there to make those, to highlight those. That darker gray is doing that for me. So you're at this point now, so you have a choice to make. You could either leave them as is, or you could try to age them. Age them would be consistent of doing some greens, some blacks, and some browns, highlighting certain areas, giving areas of showing like where water runoff, places where the green algae kind of kick up on it. And at this point, you have so much paint on it that you could use the aerosol cans if you like, or you could try to do a bunch of dry brushing and stuff like that with the regular brushes. So I'm gonna age one of them, and then we'll see what it looks like. All right, doing a little bit of aging here, a little bit of black, some browns, some greens. No real technique here. Just just play with it till you like it. A little there, a little here, a little there, kind of thing. Little dab here, a little spray there. Just mess with it till you like it. All right, so I got all three columns stood up with a couple sections of fencing. You see I did do a little bit of aging on them. There's no real exact science to it. You just use a little bit of black, brown, and greens and just play with it till you like it. Or you can do some reference pictures to kind of get an idea. I might get a little heavy with the green on these next two, but if these were outside, they would end up fading. And you see by doing completely 3 different bases, 3 different tops. You can see all the different ways you could do this and still keep your costs down and make some really unique looking columns. You can go from basic like that right there to the brick with the top on it to having like the stucco and it breaking apart and all that. And right now you can see with the 3 of these together, I'm covering 18 feet worth of space. Now I was talking about the pricing at the very beginning of the video, and I want to kind of just show a little bit of that. What I mean by it's not the cheapest, but it's by far not the most expensive. So for the 18 feet of space from Home Depot, I was right around 98 bucks. Hobby Lobby was 13 for the for those right there. And then I stopped by the Dollar Tree and spent about $4 buying a few different items to try that. So probably, roughly in the ballpark of about 115. If you already had paint, you'd be in good shape. But if say you had to buy paint, like say you didn't have enough paint or have paint at all, you're probably gonna be about another 75 for paint. So for the 18 feet right there, you're about 198. If you wanted to make it even bigger, you can always buy the same amount of material, but what I would recommend is maybe only doing 2 columns for each extra section. So this way you could always use extra pieces for maybe doing shelving in there for lights if you want to. If not, you could make another 3 columns out of it and just make another set of fencing. But if you only did 2 columns and 2 sets of fencing, it'd be the same amount of material. So you'd be kind of in the same thing, about 98 bucks there, and then $4 there. So it'd be about $102 for the next 17 feet. After that next 17 feet, you're probably going to end up having to go get more of these if you were using those. So that would jump it up a little bit. So pretty much if you went up to like say 52 feet, you'd be around the 330 mark. 69 feet, you'd be up to about 430. 86 feet, 549. If you went up 103 feet, you'd be about 651. If you had to buy a whole bunch of extra paint, you might be close to 800 bucks for that. Which really isn't that bad for making some really cool looking columns. But if you're kind of savvy and you like to look for deals, you could always go on like sales sites like the marketplace and stuff like that and try to find people that have extra foam board that they're selling, and maybe you get it for half the price, or buy 5 or 6 sheets for 10 bucks. You can save a whole bunch of money there. You don't necessarily have to use the 1x2s. If you can find lattice strips that are cheaper, use lattice strips for that section right there, and you can save a whole bunch of money there. So there's ways you could save a whole bunch of money, get this probably down to less than $500 to do like 103 feet worth of fencing, and you have some really nice looking columns with it and all that. Now, one of the questions I'm probably going to get asked is, how do I keep them from just falling over, the wind blowing them over, or people knocking them over? Generally, what I do is I'll take an extra piece of 1x2, and what I'll do is I'll cut, like the little taper on there where you cut the little point. I'll line it up with this one right here that's closest to my column, drive it into the ground. I'll try to get it to stop right about here. I'll run a screw through there, and that right there literally just makes it nice and rigid, almost like triangulating it, and that's what keeps it from falling over. That's the way I've been doing it for years, and it always works. Now, like I said, I do mine 3-sided, so I can put lights in there. I'm going to show you what that looks like. But you can make them 4-sided. It's not a big deal to do that. It's just going to take more material, and you're going to get less out of one sheet doing it that way. But let me show you the lights real fast. You see, I got a couple little props sitting back there. Now you see with the lights in the back there how it lights everything up. Obviously, the camera picks up the light differently than the naked eye does. But if you think about it, say this is your yard right here, you got some grass, here's a sidewalk, I'm walking along your display, I don't see no lights anywhere, everything's all tucked up nice and neat, all I see is the display. And if you use like the LEDs that are directional, and you put more shelves in there, you can always have an LED that shine this way, this way, this way, all that kind of stuff, and really light up your display, all the way around. Or you can put a projector inside there and have a projector projecting on something, and you won't see the projector or anything. So that's why I do mine 3-sided. One, it saves material, saves costs, and it gives me the ability to hide my lights and all that stuff, which I kind of like that aspect of it. Plus, you also can put your power strips inside there if you're worried about them getting wet. Shove the power strips up inside there so they don't get wet. But I hope you all enjoyed this video. I hope I put enough information in there for you. I hope y'all feel confident that with just some basic tools, you can make yourself some really nice looking columns. But if you like this video, hit that like button. Leave me a comment. Tell me what y'all think. As always, thanks for watching.